The Log4j vulnerability is pretty much the top news story going on right now. It is a massive, massive vulnerability. It is a widespread vulnerability. It's incredibly easy to exploit, and it can give access directly on the box to execute code. So really, really nasty business. In this video, I'm basically gonna show you, speak to it at a high level, show you kind of how it works really quickly, and then I'm going to tell you some of the tools I found that can help you identify Log4j in your environment and how you can detect if you've been compromised, and and what you can do about that, what tools are available. So you're definitely going to want to check this out. Okay, let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So if you went away for the weekend or whatever, you may not know this, but like right now, the absolute top story, the top thing on everybody's mind is Log4j and the vulnerability that it's presenting. Now, really quickly, Log4j is basically this Java library that allows for logging essentially. But the problem is it's baked into Apache servers and like Tomcat and all sorts of Apache web servers, and lots of commercial enterprise solutions have taken this open source software and baked it into their products. So Log4j is like everywhere, okay, which is why it's such a big deal. Now, what is also compounding this is it's trivial to exploit, and we're going to show you that in a second. And you can do it from anywhere in the world. So like right now, we're seeing tons of scanning on the internet looking for this vulnerability, which is very easy to detect. And on top of that, instant exploitation because the exploits are already out there. So this is like a level 10 critical, all hands on deck kind of thing. I will say, like for what it's worth, what we're seeing currently from the threat intel is showing that most threat actors are installing crypto miners, which is great instead of ransomware. But just so you guys are aware, that's what we're looking at. Okay, so really quick, let's do a lab. I want to say that Intezer did a video. I'll link to it. I'll link to all this stuff in the description below. But they did this really great video. It was like a minute long on how to show the vulnerability, and then also how they detect it on their backend platform. So I use this kind of as inspiration. In order to set up my situation. So I'm in AWS. I've got two Linux boxes. One's an attacker, one's a victim, and we're going to go ahead and execute it. Let's do that right now. Okay, so just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at, this is the vulnerable web app. That it's just a Spring-based Java, web app kind of thing, and you can get code for that right here. This is the GitHub page that they did it, and this is the same one that Intezer did in their video there. So I definitely appreciate that. So the instructions are in here. I had to get Docker stood up and make sure that my Java versions were right. The exploit. So okay. So first of all, that's the app that's running. So this is a vulnerable version of that has Log4j vulnerable running on it. Now the exploit comes from this GitHub page, Feihong CS. And it's just a JNDI exploit, okay? And the code's here. This is the command that we're going to use in our example, but obviously you can pass any command you want, right? So that's the deal. So here's our vulnerable app. We'll come back to this in a little bit. And then we have our malicious controlled LDAP server, right? So when you make the call, the victim server is going to reach out and connect to a LDAP server that you control, right? This is how you're going to push, because you control it, you can push malware, you can push whatever you want back to the victim server. So we've got our LDAP server listening here, and now we're going to run our command. Now, really quickly, I do want to point out, this is the victim machine, just as a proof of concept. This is a shell into the same, victim machine, basically. And you can see here that in the temp directory, there's just these files, nothing else, right? So let's go ahead and run our command. Now this command is being run from my personal computer, right? So I've got the victim server up there. I've got a maliciously controlled LDAP server, and I'm making this curl call from my computer. And you can see the curl call kind of outlines what the problem is. I'm curling which is basically like a web browser kind of call. I'm curling to that victim's vulnerable app. This is across the internet, right? On port 8080, which is what the vulnerable app is listening on. I'm specifically including this custom header in the into the query, into the call, right? And the header is this thing right here, which has this Jindy LDAP. This is the malicious attacker server, the LDAP server that I control. This is 1389, the port that LDAP listens on. And then, this is that base command that, if you recall, I just showed you in the exploit GitHub repo. Okay. And then this is a base 64 encoded command. And I'll just show you really quick. If you do the translation, it does this touch temp pwn. So all it's going to do is drop a file on the victim server, and it's a proof of concept, right? Okay, so let's run this. And let me actually pull up the victim vulnerable app too, so you can kind of see what happens when it gets run. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. Let's do it, victim. Okay, and we're gonna run our curl command. Okay. You saw on the back end, the LDAP server got the command, right? It was just listening before. It got the command, pushed its payload. The payload in this is just a proof of concept. No big deal. So going back to our victim machine, right? We ran this command and got this. Now we're going to run the same command, and you can see there's our pwned file, right? So the proof of concept is here. We've successfully run it. So now, so that's how it works. Okay, so hopefully that was crystal clear. So now let's get into okay, Jerry, that's cool. We know how it works. Now what, right? Let's move on. So. And just again, for more evidence on what it looks like. So Tesla, this is Tesla's website where you can build your car and stuff like that. You can see, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but there's they're pushing this Jindy LDAP query call through the custom header, which is getting it to pop up. Basically, by the way, this Java logging framework, when it sees the Jindy thing, that's when it ingests it, right? And does something with it. It logs it, right? So that's why it's so easy to track, okay? This is the actual CVE from NIST. It says it's waiting analysis, but I don't know why. I mean, it's a 10. It can't go higher than a 10 on CVSS score. So this is this is going to be it. So if you need some additional information, this is where you could go to get it. Okay. Another way. Okay, so let's talk about how you can actually find out if something's vulnerable to it. Okay, there's a couple different ways. You can use this dnslog.cn. And you can get a subdomain, right? See, we've got this subdomain right here. And we're going to go into our shell and let's see. You can do this curl to your, you can use curl, right? From a shell, or from a terminal, yep. You can curl whatever you're wanting to know whether or not an app is vulnerable, right? So say you have a web app in your environment, or anything in your environment, right? Like your mail server. Make sure you control it though, right? You can do this curl, whatever the app you're testing is, and then push this custom header. And then after the LDAP, use this dnslog.cn subdomain that you get automatically. And you'll see, right? Again, while we give that a second, if you go back to your victim vulnerable app, you'll see that query come through, right? Okay, so check it out. Refresh the record, and you can see these are the queries coming from it, which indicates that the server, that app is vulnerable to the attack, right? So this is one way that you can do it to verify that your system is in fact vulnerable. Okay, there's better options than this, but this is just one. As far as staying informed on what's going on, I can't emphasize enough how valuable Kevin Beaumont is on Twitter. This guy is legendary as far as delivering great value to the community. He's already doing a lot. I think he actually named Log4Shell, but he's got a spreadsheet coming up. I think he's actually kind of partnering with this group right here. What is this? Oh, this isn't this group. These are tools that I found. Um, this GitHub repo right here, SwitHack. Again, I'll drop a comment below. This is a list of vendors and their advisory notifications on their vulnerability to this vulnerability and how they can what you should do about it, right? Basically, so there's a ton in here. You definitely want to go here and check this out. You can see there's a lot of security, like VPNs. VPNs are all over the internet, right? Cisco, Checkpoint. This is, again, this is a major issue, guys. Okay. Um, Another thing, as far as detecting the weakness of the vulnerability, right? That's all we're doing right now. You got to remember, people. There's two things you got to do here. One, you got to figure out where in your environment the thing is vulnerable. Then you got to figure out how do you fix it, right? How do you patch it or mitigate the risk? And then finally, which we're going to use Integer Protect for, how do you, like, if it's already been popped, right? This is moving quickly. If it's already been popped and they're already doing malicious stuff on your server, whether it's running a crypto miner or using it as a foothold to go bigger, you need to know that, right? And this Integer Analyze tool is going to be wonderful for that. Okay, so let's continue on here with Huntress put this out. John Hammond, great content creator on YouTube. The point of this is to help you determine whether or not a system is in fact vulnerable, just the way I just did it with the other one. This is just a little bit easier. Copy and paste into anything, any application input box form field. So I'm doing on the back end with a curl, but like you could put this in like the login, username and password logins of the web application interface of your router, of your modem, etc. And and it'll pop up, right? So let's do this, right? Here, let's do this. Oops. Okay. Hold on, I gotta end the quote here. Right, so then it just popped, and you could see it came through from Huntress. This is, again, the vulnerable app, and the LDAP command came in. So if we go back here, you can view the connections, and you can see, yes, in fact, the request came through from my vulnerable app. So that machine, that application is in fact vulnerable. You can use this to kind of start enumerating where your exposure is, and basically based on whatever the asset is, determining how important it is to either take it offline or to get some additional logging, auditing on it, perhaps this Integer Analyze that we're going to talk about in a minute, because it's important. Just because something's vulnerable doesn't mean it's popped yet, but the way that they are moving, it is very likely that it's going to get popped. Okay, so now let's talk about Integer Protect. Okay, so listen, if you everything we've talked about right now is like how the vulnerability gets exploited, and then how can you find like applications that are vulnerable. But if you have already been popped, you may not know it, right? So what do you do about that? Especially, so like maybe if you're a big organization and you've already got like a large security operations team and visibility all over the place, yeah, maybe you're good to go. But if you don't, or you have some like some OT type stuff that you can't really touch, or you can't install stuff on it, right? Or you can't install big things on it. What do you do, right? Or you're a small business and you don't have access to these technologies, right? What do you do? So I wanted to give a shout out. Integer, did that video. I liked it. So the Protect. So Integer Protect is effectively like it's almost like a EDR solution in that it gives you visibility over malicious behaviors on an endpoint. Okay, so if you go to the dashboard, I guess this is the dashboard. You can see that I have one host in here, which is my victim app that I've enrolled in here. Now, let's look at requires attention. Okay, so you can see this is the host name. Oh, it's very difficult to see on this. Um, this web application is pretty slick looking, but it's not designed for sharing screens. But you can see this is my AWS address. Okay, requires attention. View alerts. Okay, we've got all this telemetry, all this visibility. So it's just sitting there watching. Okay, what are the alerts? Okay, one open alert. Now, earlier, before I started recording and stuff like that, I was actually working to put Netcat on it, because Netcat is basically a remote connection kind of capability. It opens a network connection between two systems, and Yes, it was cool to touch and put a pwned file on the server, but what I really wanted to do was establish a network connection so I could then get on and push whatever I wanted onto it. So I don't want to demo that obviously, but what I did want to point out is the vulnerable server saw the netcat request. You can see here trying to like open and get a shell. Um, and you could see here are like the integer protect actually did a fantastic job, including like what was the command that got executed, what was the process ID, um, where it was launched from, et cetera, what times, everything like that. So you could see all this extra data. Okay, so the one thing that I really like, having all this telemetry and all this information is great. One of the best things that I loved about using Integer Protect was how quickly and easily it was to add. Listen, you just click add host and you can do up to 10 for free. So if there's like a critical system that you need to check, you can use this without having to pay. But right here, you can see you just click on this, and it gives you a wget command that you basically just go on the vulnerable server and or whatever your system is that you want. I'm going to run it on my attacker machine, which is not in here. I just want to show you how easy this thing is. Okay, so look, this is my attacker machine in AWS, right? I'm just going to run this wget command. That's it. Okay, it's in. Now let's go back to this, go to the dashboard. You can see right here, that machine is already getting initialized, right? So you can see it's this machine right here. Yeah, you can see it's already starting to pull what commands are being drawn on it. There we go. What code is being run on it? Okay, so you can see it gives you like a lot of visibility instantly. But the reason I wanted to tell you about it is because if your machine has been popped, right, you can use this to let me go to alerts. You can use it to say what the heck happened and when did it happen, and like basically identify a compromise, right? So knowing exploitation occurred is obviously a good thing, but post exploitation, that's when the threat actors are actually doing things on your machine, right? They're loading malware or they're pivoting and moving around your network and stuff like that. So having this kind of visibility is awesome. Okay, so good work by Integer on that. So like hopefully that does it, right? So we've got this in conclusion, we've got this really nasty vulnerability that is incredibly widespread, difficult to correct, and in order to like respond to this, what you need to do is you need to find where you're vulnerable, what applications are vulnerable. I would encourage you start with things that are internet facing, but you do want to make sure that you get these all cleared up. Okay, you want to start with internet facing things, including like your mail server, if you have web apps, obviously your web apps, your VPN interface connections, Citrix, if you're using Citrix, like anything that's externally facing, you absolutely want to check. Now, we went through a bunch of different ways for you to check, right? The Huntress team's got that easy one where you just copy and paste it and look at the connections. If you want to go a little deeper, you can use that dnslog.cn. If you want to demonstrate it for other people, management's probably not going to want to see it, but if you're trying to educate your staff on what it looks like, we walked through the demo. If you want just a quick hit, the Integer video is basically a 104-second video that is the demo that I showed you, just much faster. And then if you have detected it and you want to know if the machine's already been compromised, you can use a service like Integer Protect. Like I said, the first 10 are free, and then after that, you have to pay for licenses. But at that point, I mean, you're using it to like protect your infrastructure and limit the amount of damage. So it's appropriate, right? That it would have some value. So uh, yeah, I hope this was useful. Again, like I wasn't expecting to make this video, but I spent most of today is Sunday, December 12th. I spent most of yesterday like working with my job to understand what our exposure was, and I felt very compelled to make this video and share this information with all of you. So good luck. I really hope the best for all of us. I can imagine a lot of financial institutions are getting hammered right now. Um, and it just sucks. So thanks so much. I hope you're having a great holiday. Hopefully this didn't impact you too much as far as having to work through the weekend. We'll see you next time, everyone. Thanks.